welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Midnight, written by Russell T Davies and directed by Alice Trout. Now, this story is considered by many nowadays as one of the best stories in the revived series, if not Doctor Who canon overall. But I think it is important to note that for a majority of its time after it aired, it was considered by those who had seen it as an underrated gem, not being talked about enough by the series. And I think as well it's important to see and understand where this mindset comes from. And I feel like one of the main important factors is what people were thinking about going into this episode, because when series 4 was airing and this story was announced, it was very important to note that this story wasn't a story that people were looking forward to. It didn't boast about a high budget or any sort of spectacle. It was based on the Siege story with only one main set, a cart carriage with a handful of characters. It was written by Russell T Davies, and the last time he wrote a story due to low budget factors was the story Love and Monsters. This is the first time where we have a companion light story in which the Doctor's heavily prominent, but a companion which is still occurring in the series, this case being Donna Noble, doesn't actually appear much in the story itself. So we got Russell T Davies writing a story which is content on its lower budget, something which is done before and wasn't a hit. In fact, it's one of the factors that made a lot of people really nervous about this story. It also came to light that this story was actually a last-minute addition to the series after an original script by Tom the guy who wrote Silver, Age of Steel and Rise of the Cybermen. He originally put a script into Series 4, Century House, a story where Doctor Who would have had a crossover with Most Haunted. Let that sink in for a while. But Russell T Davies didn't want that script in because he thought it was too comedically similar to the story Unicorn and a Wasp, and so he quickly wrote this story, and that of course made people very, very nervous for this story. We also have Alice Trout. Now, she has done some really great work and some phenomenal pieces of media for Torchwood. However, when it comes to Doctor Who, she's only had a very limited role. She's done some additional photography for the story, so Sontaran Experiment and The Poisonous Sky, in which she directed like a little bit of light. And despite that story being a very well liked story, a lot of people feel like its over brightness and over simple look was a weak factor in that narrative. She also directed the Series 4 episode The Doctor's Daughter, which I've tackled before on the marathon. In fact, I've talked about all these stories on the marathon before. And for those of you who don't remember, The Doctor's Daughter isn't a particularly liked story. And so, with no monsters, Alice Troughton directing, a low budget, and Russell T Davies already having a track record of not doing really great work when he is under fire, essentially. This story, basically, when the story was coming out, when they were building it up, most people were just kind of, doesn't look that interesting. And so those are all competing factors for it being a very underwatched, not a particularly liked or disliked story, but an underwatched story, because a lot of people took all of these factors in and thought, you know what, I can live without it if it turned out to be bad or terrible or something. But then the story came out, And it is considered by many as one of the best pieces of media in the Doctor Who franchise. In fact, many have cited this as their favourite story of Doctor Who. And when you watch it, it's easy to see why. Now, I'm going to break this story down very differently to how I normally do these videos, in which I basically detail things that happen in the story scene by scene, because this story, in terms of its plot, there's not really much going into it, because it's cabin fever story. A handful of characters are locked in one room, not just like one building, one space, but one room for the majority of the story. And so the story revolves around that, and I think that tackling this story in the way I usually do it might be an injustice to just how well this story is great. But let me talk about something which I don't know how to feel about this story right off the bat, and that is the idea of this story being a companion-light adventure. The first of many stories where the companion of the series wouldn't have that much to have in the plot line. This was to break down the requirements of the actors. In Series 2 and Series 3, we were introduced to the Doctor Light episodes, in which we had our main cast, both Doctor and companion, not appearing in the story for the majority of the adventure. And so in Love and Monsters and Blink, we introduced completely new characters to be our audience surrogate into the adventure, kind of making it feel like this could have been a completely its own thing, but the Doctor just sort of appears as if like he's just sort of this entity that exists outside this bubble. So what Russell T Davies then instead did this series was he had one companion-like adventure with the Doctor heavily featured in it, and then he had a Doctor-like adventure where the main character is the companion Donna Noble. And I think in terms of a production, that works really well, because Donna Noble was one of the most energetic, one of the most great companions of the series in general. As you might have noticed in my marathon series talking about every of these stories with Donna Noble, she was a character who a lot of people didn't like when they first saw her in the story The Runaway Bride, and someone I personally took a while to get used to, but she is considered a beloved character, and so she later down the line had just an own episode dedicated to her. But I feel like here it is kind of a bummer that we had such a limited time with Donna, and we had to have a story where the Doctor doesn't have Donna's companion during the Donna run, if that makes any sense. I mean, surely it's made up by the fact that she appeared as an extra companion in a story years prior, but I don't know, it just feels really strange personally, especially how she is a very popular character. Of course, they didn't know that when they were filming this at the time, but that just gets into my head. But anyway, now taking that out of the side, this story is essentially perfect. For those of you who might have been keeping up with this entire marathon, you know I love stories where you're just bringing the narrative to its bare roots. This is a story in which you only have a handful of characters, and you literally have one setting, you have one environment, and it's up to the writers, up to the creatives behind the scenes to really put some energetic adventure and narrative flow in this. And Russell T Davies gives us a creepy, haunting narrative. But I think what makes this story really great is that the story is obviously known for being a very creepy, disturbing story, but it doesn't go all out creepy for a while. You get at least 18 minutes at the start, maybe even like 20 minutes, which is the majority of the episode of just the Doctor in this environment, learning about like what's happening. Like essentially, the Doctor has taken Donna to this kind of like spectacular spa-like holiday dome set on the planet Midnight, which its surface nothing can survive on because of its sun, its radiation, and the whole place is covered in diamonds. A fantastic environment, and I love the fact that we only get glimpses of it, making this world feel a lot more magical and a lot more. Ooh, look at that! That looks gorgeous. It kind of puts that idea in your head. But the Doctor basically he's gone to see this. I think it's like a waterfall of diamonds or something like that, and he goes onto this cart, this like train thing, which will take him there, and there's only a handful of people that get there, and it'll take, they think they say 4 hours to get where they need to go, but because of that, because of safety, because of the environment of the sun, they can't look outside, which keeps this, means that there's no windows in the setting, which keeps the story a very claustrophobic feel, of claustrophobic narrative, and it just seems to have fit all together. But like I said, majority of the story doesn't necessarily play on those horror narratives yet. In fact, the first few minutes of the story, we have this playful, almost Donna's theme, even though I don't think Donna's theme actually plays, but like that, playful, almost cheesy music by Murray Gold playing throughout the first half of the story, which I'd like to point out, this is only one episode long as well. And I think this is great because as an audience viewer, this puts us unnerving, because as a Doctor Who fan, we are kind of expecting the Doctor to just jump in, the narrative kicks in, already there are villains setting up their plans, their evil scheme as the Doctor comes in, and it really puts you on nerve, because it's like, wait, I'm not used to this. The Doctor and everyone are happy. Is this just going to be an episode where everyone's happy, where everyone just gets along and there's no conflict? And that could have been a very weak start to an adventure. If this was in a poorer hands, or wasn't as written so great here, then we could have had a really dull episode. But luckily Russell T Davies fills this cart with some really interesting characters and some really interesting, they're not like super interesting. They don't have these like bombastic story arcs, and they've each got like their own all their plot lines and stuff. But they're realistic. They are just your average people, and to see the Doctor interact with these people, and at the first half, there's nothing going wrong. Just all of these characters just having a chat, getting along. It's just really nice to see. So let's break them down by characters. And the first one that we really get introduced to is the hostess. This woman who, she tries to keep everything together, but clearly when something goes wrong, when something starts shivering, she does it's out of her element. You can clearly tell that she's kind of used to this environment of keeping everything steady. So when, for example, the Doctor ruins the entertainment system, she kind of panics and flubbles, and even though she is the one that essentially is supposed to take charge, she can't really, because she is she's kind of used to just everything going as planned, and you can kind of see this element that she's kind of sick of her job. There's a great moment at the start where the Doctor, she's been introduced to the Doctor, she's basically telling him, it's like, right, all the extras and stuff, here's all of your complimentary stuff, and you can kind of get the feeling that she's just fed up the Doctor right off the bat, which we'll get onto in a little bit. We also have Skye Sylvia, this woman who, she kind of is annoyed by everything, and she kind of keeps to herself. She's a bit of an introvert, and I like how right off the bat, she's kind of really annoyed about all this entertainment system. She kind of gives the Doctor these glances as if to go, this is annoying, I don't like this environment. And the Doctor, actually a lot less quirkier than we're used to with David Tennant's portrayal, kind of like has this like normal relationship with her. There's a great moment where they're just talking and it's just like, okay, how did you get here? Are you a couple? Do you travel with anyone? And she's like, no, I'm by myself. I'm just recently single. My partner, she left me and she wanted to go to another galaxy, whilst I'm essentially stuck here in this spa planet trying to enjoy life, but really I'm not that interested in moving on, essentially. And the Doctor just talks to her like a normal person, and that is really just a really nice, sweet little moment that I really like that scene. We also have this small family. We have the father, Biff, this really average Joe. We have this Val, who is your cliched bossy mother of sorts. She kind of shouts at her teenager son, and then she's just trying to enjoy herself. But she is the type of person who would break easily under pressure, as we will see later on in the adventure. And then we get to Jethro, that's his name. This antsy teenager, bit of this like, emo type. He dyes his hair all black, he wears black clothing, and he does kind of enjoy seeing other people being miserable. And later on in the story, he kind of takes fun at the terrible situations. He's the kind of person who he gets a kick out of anarchy. But that's not the most interesting about this character. This character is played by none other than British icon Colin Morgan from Merlin. In fact, the series of Series 4 appeared earlier on in the year that Merlin actually first aired. So this was Colin Morgan's big year. 2008 was just Colin Morgan's year. He was in Doctor Who in one of the best episodes, and he was also in Merlin. So if you're a Merlin fan, highly recommended that you try this episode out. He doesn't have that big of a role in it, but I think his character here does play into that normal feeling of it as adventure. And another duo of characters in here, we have Dee Dee, this girl who she is under the wing of this character, and she's kind of like a student, but she knows more than people give her credit for. Her father was a mechanic, and therefore when the Doctor starts spouting technical babble about the engineering of the cart, she does kind of know that he's basically fibbing. And I think that puts and the fact that she's so down to earth, she's kind of nervous, she doesn't really know how to stand up for herself, but she clearly has the capacity to be a lot more than she gives herself credit for, which I think is a very relatable character trait. And despite the fact that, like with all of these characters, they're only in this short amount of time in this episode, you really get a gravity towards her and you feel for this relationship. But I left the best for last, because we get to Professor Hobbs, this enthusiastic professor who has studied the planet of Midnight. In fact, he is fascinated by it because there seems to be no history. There is no... there's never been a civilization in here, as far as they've known. And he's just fascinated by that. No humans has ever been on this planet. In fact, some of the places that they go through in this episode actually have never been touched by human or any sort of civilization before, as far as they know. And he is just fascinated about that. I love the scene in which we have this sort of montage of the Doctor interacting with all these characters, and there's one bit where he basically sets up the presentation on how midnight works and why he's fascinated with it. He is the character that Dee Dee is the student of Professor Hobbs. Now this character is also played by a very important actor. He is played by none other than David Troughton, the son of second Doctor Patrick Troughton, and he's also appeared before in episodes like the previous stories in the classic series, the War Games, and I want to say it's the Curse of Peladon, or it could be the Monster of Peladon. I can't remember which one it is, but I want to say Curse. I want to say it's Curse of Peladon. So he's no stranger to Doctor Who. He's also appeared before in Big Finish audio dramas, and he would later go on to play more Big Finish audio dramas. Hooray! But to see his face in a much older environment in the revived series, and the way he kind of plays the character reminds me a lot of his father, in fact. He has this kind of bubbling, almost dull, despite the fact that he's clearly a smart person who has a lot of vast intelligence, he kind of has this innocence, bubbliness about him. And that, again, reminds me a lot of the Second Doctor, only with the Second Doctor, that, for the most part, is used as a mask to hide the Doctor's true motives. Whilst here, as far as we know, this is Professor Hobbs as a character. So I don't know if that played into his character here. I don't know. As you might have noticed, we've gone in this episode a long time. We haven't even got to the threat. And my God. So, like I said, the story, for the most part, has no real threat. There's no real danger. Most of the characters enjoying themselves, having a blast. And then it starts kicking in. The shuttle that they're in, the cart that they're in, suddenly just stops. And nobody knows what's going on. And the first theme, the first idea of this story starts playing in. The idea of paranoia. And this really, really plays very well in this story, because we get them to love these characters, to enjoy them, to have this feeling of understanding with them. And then it's time to play that against it, because now all our characters are starting to not turn on each other as such, but they are arguing, they start screaming, they start shouting at each other as things start going wrong. The Doctor goes into the front of the cart and tries to figure out something where there seemingly is something. We can't really see it, we can't really picture it, but there is something out there, something alive, seemingly running towards them. And we get this great scene in which there's all these characters is like, what the hell's going on? And everybody starts panicking because they think there's going to be no air, there's not going to be enough air, because the cart is stopped and the characters are in a rush. They're like, I've got to get to the thing and then get back. I can't just be stuck here. This is mental, and there's this claustrophobic feel to the adventure just all of a sudden just kicked in. And all our characters are trying to debate. And I love how the Doctor's trying to reassure everybody. He tries to comfort everybody, as the Doctor normally does. He tries to calm everybody down and keep everybody relaxed, as he, the hero of the story, the egocentric Doctor, will save the day and keep everybody safe. But for now, let's keep everyone ignorant for the moment. And then knocking starts coming out from the outside. And it's clearly sentient, because people knock on the door and it knocks back. Something is alive outside the surface of midnight. And it's after the crew. Just that moment where they kind of realise, they slowly realise that there's something living out there. Just really starts shocking. And Sylvia Skye starts panicking. There's a little bit of dialogue where she's like, she's after me. And I love the fact that it never gets mentioned. As if, like, she might have known something, or she might have just gone completely mad and crazy, but it's up to the viewer, and that's what's really great. That's one of the main factors of what makes a story so great. It's up to the viewer as the entity starts smashing in through the cart, and seemingly doesn't seem to have succeeded. The front of the cart gets destroyed, leaving the two drivers to vaporize at the surface of midnight. And even though the cart is damaged, there doesn't seem to be any breaches. So they feel like they're fine for the moment. But then Skye is just kind of coupling in and completely quiet, completely different to how she was seconds before. And I love how the Doctor's so reassuring, really comforting. All these characters are like, she's acting really weird, she's acting really strange. But the Doctor's like, okay, it's okay, we're all alive now, we're all okay, just turn around, just turn to me. And Sylvia and Skye, so I say, she turns around and there seems to be no emotion in her eyes. She just seems to just like looking at everybody. And here we get to the villain, the tension of the story as she starts copying people's speeches. She copies everybody, all of their dialogue, all of their repetitiveness. And she starts repeating them. And we get some great moments in which the Doctor tries to sit down with her and is asking her why, and then does the square root of pi, and she copies it exactly whilst he's doing it. It's kind of like out of sync at the moment. That and the directing and the claustrophobia and the acting. That one scene took on like probably an entire day to try and like nail down. It is stunning, and just a prop to everybody working in this story. That bit where the Doctor and Skye are thinking she's got to copy him is just brilliant. And it really gets under your skin. And all of the characters, basically, they come up with these theories, these ideas that, has Skye gone mad? Is she having a nervous breakdown? Or has the entity outside, which has now stopped knocking, has it got in? Is it possessing her? Is it taking life inside of Skye? And so, with the paranoia, with everybody's nerves on tense, and how this could be a deadly threat, this is a completely new life form to them, and it could at any moment try and kill them and slaughter them. Maybe we should kill her first. Maybe we should chuck her out first. And the Doctor, kind of seeing that, like, these people are becoming irrational. They're kind of like going a bit mental at the moment. Tries to like calm them down. It's like everybody's like, relax, okay? This could be a new life form. This could be a new person, a new thing. Or she could be ill, for all we know. But there's no danger yet. We just got to wait until the rescue crew come and rescue us. And so, all of a sudden, they realise that Skye has stopped copying them, or the majority of them. She's only now copying the Doctor's words. And there's this moment where the Doctor, he's just kind of freaking out, kind of breaking her, like, it's just absolutely... before that, I should say that we get this really intense scene which basically proves that no, she's not having a mental breakdown, because there's a point where she stops copying them and she says the same thing as them simultaneously at the exact same moment. And it's such a simple premise, it's such a simple idea of a character just copies people, what they're saying in a claustrophobic environment. But it works so well. And this all leads into one of my favourite scenes and one of my favourite moments of the 10th Doctor era. And for that, to explain why, I think we need to talk about the Doctor's character in general, and then specifically the 10th Doctor. The Doctor, I think it's safe to say, is two things in terms of the core Doctor. He has a bit of an ego, and he is a very authoritarian character. He's the type of character who, in a situation like this, would take authority and try and lead and calm people into where he wants them to be. And that has just always been a character of the Doctor, and for the most part, for most stories, that is what gets him out of trouble. He is the character who will use his words, he would use his voice to solve problems. He will not fight, he will not kill. He's a person who would speak. He would tolerate his enemies to death, shall we say. And then we get into the 10th Doctor's character, as he is by far the most relatable Doctor, shall we say. He's one of the Doctors who has the most likely chance of being just a regular person. In stories with Rose Tyler, he was the Doctor that was more likely to be part of a regular family, and he's always just in his grasp, but he can never truly reach, which makes him such one of the most compelling Doctors. And I think that's why so many people he is their fan favourite. But I don't personally feel like it plays into most of his stories, so there's that. But the 10th Doctor as well also is one of the most egotistical Doctors. He loves to just spout how brilliant he is. This could be considered like a cliche of Russell T Davies's era, something which I think the New Who has really struggled with, where it's just like the Doctor's just like, you get scenes in which like he solves everything, and he's just like, I'm brilliant, I'm amazing, oh, everyone's amazing, everyone's humanity is amazing, and everything is amazing, and I'm brilliant, I'm smart, and oh, if I just click this, oh, the enemies would go away. Which, it happens a lot in thing, but in New Who specifically, it has become a sort of a cliche in a bad sense. Not here, however. The Doctor starts taking control, starts taking it, but we're in a situation where the characters don't want to listen to him, and the Doctor tries to raise his voice. He tries to push forth, and the characters are not listening, though some of them are. There's this debate going along, and at this point in the story, the Doctor is still in charge. His authority on the characters is weakening because they are struggling to realise who he is, why should he be in charge. He doesn't even give us his real name. We saw him talking to her earlier. Why should we listen to you? Maybe you're in cahoots with her. Most of us think that we should kill her, so why shouldn't we? And the Doctor's just like, we will not kill her. Over my dead body, there is no vote. I'm in control here. You will listen to me. And that ego, that element that's always been a part of the Doctor, but specifically the new series era, and again specifically the 10th Doctor era, that plays against him. And this all culminates into a scene in which characters are just debating and arguing with the Doctor, and the Doctor just shouts that he is just, the reason why people should listen to him is because he is clever. And in the majority of stories, people would listen to him. It's like, okay, you're the clever one, you take charge, you know what you're doing, you know what you're saying. And he does, because he has fought monsters on numerous occasions. Of course, that's why he's the Doctor. But here, when he says that moment when he says, I'm clever, that's when the debate is over. he has lost all control on the crew. Everyone is turned against him. And I feel like this is a great moment in which Sylvia stops. This is the moment where Sylvia stops copying everybody and is just focusing on the Doctor's voice. And there's this kind of like underlining theme about voices here, because it's when the Doctor loses his voice in terms of his authority on the crew members, does Sylvia only then tackle him as if he's lost his voice. And we even get the characters considering, it's like, right, if the Doctor's not going to let us kill her to keep us safe, maybe we should kill him as well. And it's just the idea that the Doctor's ego, the Doctor, one of the main character traits that has been throughout all the Doctors, whether it's just a small little segment of them or it's one of the founding factors of them, it's always played in the part of the Doctor. And here, it's one of the few stories in which the Doctor does kind of have a story arc, a storyline for him and his emotional character traits. And this all culminates into a scene in which Sylvia stops imitating his voice. She actually starts saying things before the Doctor's saying them. And now the Doctor is copying her. And the Doctor seems to be frozen as Skye basically goes up with the rest of the crew, seemingly out of the possession of this entity, and it's the Doctor's now that's copying everything she is saying. And that scene where David Tennant's like not even blinking, he's just kind of like fixed on where Skye was, as all the characters behind him, with some really great shots of just like the Doctor just like in the foreground or in the background, as all the characters are debating on whether we should just kill the Doctor, because now the entity is transported onto him. That's what it appears to be. So we kill the Doctor, who at the beginning was stopping us from killing this entity to begin with. That solves both of our problems, and then we're all safe until the rescue crew happens, and then we should be fine and dandy. And the Doctor has no way of stopping at this. For the final act of the story, the Doctor's voice has been taken away from him. His ego, his main superpower, his voice, the fact that he can reason, the fact that he can make people understand, has been taken away from him. That is just amazing storytelling right there. And Alice Troughton's directing pushed forward that point. It's such an amazing piece of art, piece of media. It's just, it makes you jealous that you couldn't have written this story before. Like, it seems to just everything just pieced together. And Skye basically convinces everybody to chuck the Doctor out, as the creature has seemingly possessed him. But the hostess kind of clicks together that, no, it's not. The creature is still inside Skye. It's just now it's like trapped the Doctor, it's taken his voice. And so she sacrifices herself to kill Skye, freeing the Doctor. And when the Doctor's free, he's just like, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. He's just reassuring himself, he's just repeating. And I love the look he just gives everybody, as if like, you considered murder. You have lost all respect from me. And we have this beautiful moment where, like, it cuts, I believe it's like 4 hours later, where our characters are just in silent. Oh no, it's 20 minutes, sorry. 20 minutes later, our characters are just sitting in the cart, completely silent. And the Doctor asks, what was the hostess's name? And Professor Hobbs basically announces it's just like, we don't know. Nobody asked her name. Despite the fact that they've been in this car with only a handful of people for so long, nobody even bothered to ask her name, who she was as a human. And that really just puts home the point of what this story is trying to say. The lack of voice, the lack of the ability to just express yourself. And then we have a character who sacrificed herself for all of these people would hopefully be remembered as somebody who saved everyone's life, and I don't even know her name. It's amazing art. And I really love the ending of this story, in which the Doctor is reunited with Donna, and you can clearly see that this narrative, this story, has affected the Doctor on an emotional level, as the Doctor, he's really not himself. He's not as quick. He seems to have got his arms crossed. He's calm. He's a bit calm. And Donna tries to reassure him it's fine, as the Doctor is basically, he starts to loosen up a bit. He's like, he says something in French, like one of his quotes. It's not allons-y, it's blunt, I can't pronounce it, I do apologise. And then Donna copies him, trying to reassure him. And the Doctor's just like, does this usual, don't do that. But it's not in a funny way, it's not in a quirky way. It's a very serious, because this story, the idea that the Doctor has lost his voice really has just gotten to him. And it's one of the few stories in which the Doctor is emotionally scarred after the events of this story. And it's... So anyway, that's Midnight. Overall, it's clearly to see why this story, by many, including myself, is a 10 out of 10. Absolutely gorgeous piece of work. Everything from the acting, from the characters, from the directing, David Tennant, just everything, the pacing, the flow of the adventure, the fact that the villain doesn't actually have a sort of appearance, the fact that there's so much just left to the mystery. I can make an entirely different video talking about completely other topics of the adventure which I haven't talked about in this video, and it might even be longer, and I could like completely skip everything I've just talked about. It's just so well made. It's kind of amazing to think that this was a story that nobody was looking forward to, and now it's a story that everyone loves to rewatch, and it's something that just like, it's so good. And the fact that it just appeared in series 4 just after another story which was so well loved is just absolutely astonishing. And hopefully Doctor Who would keep this amazing track record of like 10 out of 10 stories going for the foreseeable future. But we got a while to get onto that. So anyway, that's Midnight. Really well handled. So join me next time, where we will conclude series 2 of Torchwood, as Jack is confronted with his past, with his brother, with his ex-lover, as we say goodbye to not one but 2 of our fellow Torchwood crew members. So join me next time for Absent Friends, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!